No.
Oh, that makes it nice and easy. I'm just going to connect my whiteboard, share screen. There we go. All right then, we'll make a start. I appreciate you starting a little earlier for me today, and we'll open with prayer. I invite you to bow. Our loving God in heaven, we thank you and praise you for giving us the Sabbath day and for bringing us together, for pouring your rain from heaven, the showers and the outpouring that have made us stronger and are tying us together, and we preparing us for what is ahead. We ask for your Spirit this morning to guide and direct our discussion, and I pray that the whole day would be a blessing for the members of Kenya as they have many more meetings to come this afternoon. So bless this time we have at the beginning of the day. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So I hadn't received any questions, so I thought maybe we could take the opportunity to revise a study that was given at the ICM last year in France, where as you remember, the symbols of Revelation 17, the definitions that were given in that camp, opened up to us a greater understanding of the Sunday law as being July 18, 2024. And so considerable effort was made at that camp to help us to understand those definitions. One of the studies was taking those definitions and applying them to the book of Daniel and the symbols used in the book of Daniel. We know that Daniel and Revelation are the same book. Same line of prophecy spoken of in Daniel is taken up in the book of Revelation. And while there are differences, we wanted to note the similarities. So I'm hoping for your participation this morning. And also, I hope you've got a Bible handy. We'll be working from the book of Daniel. So please prepare to unmute and share answers and thoughts. So we're going to be looking at the definitions of Revelation 17 and comparing them with Daniel 8 and 9. So the first, where we'll first start is the 2300-day prophecy. So we're going to start with stuff we already know, as Peter advised. And we'll read Daniel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14. So would somebody like to read that for us? Got a volunteer?
Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spoke, How long shall be the vision concerning the days and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
Thank you. So here we see this heavenly conversation between two saints. And we know that one of those saints is a Gabriel, and the other saint, that certain saint, is Palmoni. It's one of the names that is attributed to Christ when he is dealing with time prophecies. It's a wonderful number, the number of secrets, and secrets in the Bible are prophecies. So there's 2,300 days until the cleansing of the sanctuary. To get an understanding of that, where to get the beginning of that start date, we have to go to Daniel 9. So another volunteer to read Daniel 9, verse 25.
Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a start date from the going forth of the commandment to restore Jerusalem. So let's give that a date. Anybody want to shout out?
For 57 BC.
Thank you. 457 BC. And we're given 70 weeks. 70 weeks are cut off for Daniel's people. And that's going to take us to 34 AD. So there's our 70 weeks. Or 490 days. Which is going to leave how many more days? 1,810 days left. That'll take us to October 22, 1844. So that's our 2,300-day prophecy when we put Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 together. So Daniel 8:14 is marking what happens on October 22, 1844. The sanctuary is cleansed or justified or made right. So this is all about the sanctuary. But notice it says, when we read Daniel 8, 13 and 14, there are two things that are trodden down. The sanctuary is trodden down, and in 1844 it's made right, but the host is also trodden down. So what prophecy do we go to understand more about the host and the treading down of the host? The sanctuary and the host are being trodden down. And the question is, well, how long will both of them be trodden down? All we've got for an answer with the 2,300 is about the sanctuary. We need another prophecy to show us when the host is made right.
2520.
Yeah, thank you, the 2520. So let's revise that one. And we've got our beginning date, 7/23, which will give us 2 lots of 1260s. That takes us to 1798. We've got another start date of 677. So we've got the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom with 2 start dates. The second one takes us to 1844. So what does this represent here, the 1798? What's happening over those 2 1260 time periods? The host is being trodden down. In 1798, we see the restoration of the host. 1844 is also the story of the sanctuary. So if we put the 2 prophecies together, the 2300 and the 2520, we can get start and end dates for the host and the sanctuary. We can see that in Daniel 8, verse 19, because Jesus says to Gabriel, make Daniel understand the vision. And Gabriel comes to Daniel and tells him that at the last end of the indignation, the time appointed shall be. So the last end of the indignation is 1844, because that's the date that Daniel really wants to know. He wants to know October 22, 1844. He wants to know the end of that vision. And the end of that vision is the last end of the indignation, the last end of that 2520. If the prophecy's got a last end, it must have a first end. And the first end is 1798. And that's when the host is restored. So 2 things get trodden down: the host and the sanctuary. If we were to put these 2 prophecies together, we'll put some common points, but we'll start in 457. What's 457? We've laid out the dates. Let's just put in some detail. What's 457 BC about? We've read it earlier. What's the decree to do?
To restore Jerusalem.
Yes, to restore the city. And city and host are synonymous here. Because the city is what protects and encapsulates the host, the people, the army. So we've got a restoration of the city in 457 BC. And then we're told 70 weeks. So we've got this last week of Bible prophecy, last week of the 70 weeks, which is given in Daniel 9. And we read verse 25. from the going forth of that commandment to restore the city would be 70 weeks, but unto Messiah the Prince would be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that's going to take us to Messiah the Prince. And that's not 34 AD. What year is that? What year do we see Messiah the Prince?
(27 AD).
27 AD. So 69 weeks takes us to 27 AD. So this is the last week (27 AD) with the baptism of Christ takes us to Messiah, the Prince, with a capital P. And in Daniel 8 verse 11, something happens to that prince. That prince is cut off by pagan Rome. And we're told when in Daniel 9. After the 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So after this time period, Messiah is cut off, and we know when, because we're told in verse 27 it's in the midst of the week. So 31 AD, there's the cutting off. What else happens there at 31 AD? When pagan Rome cuts Messiah off, what does that say about pagan Rome in Daniel 8:11? How is that described?
Magnified himself.
Yes. Magnifies himself. This is self-exaltation. By Rome. And this is not just Rome generic, but by the little horn masculine. And then what are we told? What else is told that happens here? Somebody read Daniel 9 verse 24.
"70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy."
Okay, so a lot's going to happen in that last week of the 70 weeks. But in the fulfilling of that 70 weeks, we're going to see all these 7 events, these 7, I guess, the culmination of 7 things in this last week. And what do all these 7 things have in common? What are they to do with? What are they related to?
The host,
The host?
I think it's
Or-
dealing with sin problem.
And what did God give their people to deal with the sin problem? What teaches us how to deal with the sin problem? Or what taught them?
I think based on the book of I think Exodus 28 verse 5, the sanctuary.
The
sanctuary
sanctuary.
system.
Yes. So all of these things here, this list, finishing transgression, making an end of sins, making reconciliation for iniquity, all these things are related to the sanctuary. So in 457, we see a restoration of a city or a host. And in this last week of the 70 weeks, we're going to see a restoration of the sanctuary. This is confirming the covenant. 924 calls it the confirmation of the covenant. So when we're talking about the sanctuary here in this last week, are we talking about the earthly or the heavenly sanctuary? What sanctuary gets where is all this reconciliation taking place?
The earthly one?
So when Christ dies, what happens in the earthly sanctuary?
I think literally there is this essence of the curtain being torn apart. It's a signification that that system is coming to an end. There's a shift from the earthly to heavenly.
So shift from earthly to heavenly. Because Jesus didn't die within the walls of Jerusalem. That lamb was not sacrificed in the earthly temple. So what we're seeing here is a transition. While Christ died on earth, we're now going to be taken within days to the holy place in heaven. So a transition from the earthly to the heavenly. So this is not literal but spiritual. Even though there was a literal death on earth, we're going to see a shift. So 457, we note the city, Jerusalem, a host. And in this last week, we know the work of the sanctuary. When probation closed in 34 AD, there isn't anything external to note on that day. We mark that date purely by math. You can't go to any historical source and say that Stephen died in 34 AD. There is no no record of that. But we simply do the math and we believe by faith. So in Daniel 9, we're going to note another date. We look closely at verses 26 and 27. So Messiah is cut off after 62 weeks, and Messiah confirms the covenant with many for 1 week. So if we compare 26 and 27, the very beginning sentences are talking about the same event in the same time. Messiah being cut off is when Messiah confirms the covenant with many. And what was meant to happen, or I guess what did happen in 31 AD, according to verse 27, is the sacrifices and oblations cease. Because this is where type meets antitype. That's why that veil was rent. The earthly system had done its job. It had fulfilled its purpose. It pointed to the true Lamb of God. But did the sacrifices and oblations cease? So spiritually, they did. They don't mean anything anymore. But literally, the Jews are going to keep sacrificing. They're going to keep holding on to this obsolete service. Until when? Until 70 AD. And this is where Rome, in verse 26, it describes the people of the prince that come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. So we've got people of the prince. With a small p. And what are they going to do? Destroy the city and sanctuary. Jerusalem and the temple. Or the host and the temple. So who's the prince and who's the people of the prince?
Titus.
Okay, close. Titus was the general, but who's the big boss? Who's actually the prince? Who sits on the throne?
I think Satan.
Who's Titus's dad? We can write Titus. Titus, I've got no problem with Titus, but I'll just let you know that is Vespasian.
Rome.
Vespasian is Titus's dad. It's Vespasian that gives the orders to his general to go to Jerusalem and clean it out. So the people of the prince is the army. It's the army of Rome. The prince is who's sitting on Caesar's throne, and the people of that prince is his army.
Excuse.
Yes?
Do you mind repeating the name of that prince you're referring to in Daniel, in that verse? The prince. Who's the prince?
Vespasian. But if you said Titus, then that's okay.
Do you mind writing it on that board?
Sure, I'll write it again. I should double check that I've spelt it right. And I haven't. That's an A. So that's how Daniel 9 verse 26 describes it. But 9 verse 27 is going to repeat the same history. So 26 and 27, so giving the same history with different words. So in verse 27, it says, "And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate." If you have a marginal reference, it will describe it this way: "With abominable armies, he shall make it desolate." Rome uses abominable armies to desolate Jerusalem, the city, and the sanctuary. So the people of the prince, the people is the abominable armies. Again, 26 and 27 are giving the same history, different words. And why are they desolating the city and the sanctuary? Because of the abominations. Those continual sacrifices are an abomination because that service was completed in 31 AD. It should have ceased. The literal should have ceased. So the sacrifices and oblations that should have ended in the midst of the week are now ended, and there have not been any ever since. So what we've done there is we've gone to Daniel, I'll just write Daniel 9, 26 and 27. And we can do the same with the next phrases in 26 and 27. "And the end thereof shall be with a flood." The end of this work of the abominable armies finishes in 538 AD. That's how verse 26 describes it. Verse 27 describes it as even until the consummation. So 538 is described as a flood and a consummation. So flood, we understand to be both the work of the armies in driving out the Goths, but also the flood of false doctrines that is now going to come into the church. Or this is the work of Jezebel of Revelation chapter 2. How Thyatira would be faced with Jezebel for 1260 years. Those 1260 years begins and ends with a flood. Consummation is the coming together of what we identify as church and state in that history. So there's the woman and the beast. Come together. So that's 538. So this is the work of the little horn feminine, or the papacy. And what is this little horn going to do in this history? If we go back to Daniel 8, verse 12. Can we read Daniel 8, verse 12, a volunteer?
And
11
the
verse
host
12.
was given.
Daniel 8, verse 12.
And an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered.
So what is a host? A host is an army. An army was given the papacy. So that him, if you notice there, that him is a supplied word. It really should be it, because this is the papacy, not papal Rome, not pagan Rome. An army was given the papacy. Why was the army given to the papacy? Because the papacy did not have one of its own. Papacy doesn't have an army, so it will be given one. And what will the papacy do with this army? It's going to cast down the truth, practice and prosper. So 8:12, Daniel 8:12, it's going to desolate the truth. What truth gets desolated by the papacy? Can you follow the thread?
Sanctuary.
The sanctuary truth. Thank you. Because what's the papacy going to do to the sanctuary truth? It's going to take it from heaven and bring it back down onto the earth. While there won't be any literal sacrifices of animals, there'll be a corruption of the corruption of the Christian practices, and bring it down to earthly temples and churches. So that's what we would see in the Mass and in confession and all the rituals of Catholicism. So the sanctuary is going to be desolated, but not physically, but spiritually. And what else does this power do? If we go over to verse 24, to the last part of verse 24, it destroys the mighty and the holy people. We'll go 8:24. Desolates God's people. And this is the desolation of the host. And we know that there was great persecution in the 1260, but this is also a spiritual persecution too, because we know from Revelation chapter 2 that the work of Jezebel is to teach and seduce God's people. And that is the desolation of them spiritually. So that's what it is attempting to do. And then we know that in 1798, which we get from the 25:20, we go to Daniel 9, verse 26. It says, the end of the war, desolations are determined. So this is the end of the war. There's going to be desolations, but who's going to be desolated? We have to go to verse 27. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolator. So your marginal reference will give a better reading. which is basically saying that the desolating power gets desolated. So desolations are poured upon the desolator. So the desolator gets desolated. So what happens when this desolating power gets desolated? It no longer has a host, a power, and an army to tread down the mighty and holy people, which means the mighty and holy people can now be free. And this, so 1798 will mark from the 2520 where God's host will begin to be restored. (1844), the sanctuary. So we've put these two prophecies together, the 2300 and the 2520, to lay out the work that these desolating powers do to the sanctuary and the host, and how the sanctuary and the host are restored. The progressive revelation through these prophecies of their restoration. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So we've noted cities, sanctuaries. They get...
Terrie,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about your reference of Vespasian. So, in your analysis, is it safe for an individual, when going to that verse, that is 70 AD, the people of the prince, is it vague or rather just basic to say the prince is just Rome, or just to be just straightforward to make it Vespasian?
We can say Rome. Yeah, Rome will work. But we do note that there is an individual here as well.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Well, let's bring this up again. We'll go through our definitions and see if we can legitimately say Vespasian or not. So we'll talk about that. So that's a good question. All right, so let's go to our definitions from Revelation 17, and we're only going to use two. So in Revelation 17, as in Revelation 13, where are we? Oh, look what I've done. Sorry. Writing and not thinking. 1798. We know in Revelation 17 that an angel comes to John and says, I want to show you something. And that angel goes to John and picks him up and goes and plops him in a certain place in history so that John can actually watch something happen. The angel is going to say, let me show you the judgment of the great whore. If the angel was using the language of Daniel chapter 9, the angel would have said, let me show you the desolating power getting desolated. Because it's the same thing. The judgment of the great whore is that hall getting desolated? So in 1798, we can place John the Revelator here in Revelation 17, from Revelation 17. So John is going to be looking backwards and forwards from that time period. Gabriel wants John to understand, and we're John, this fifth kingdom, in order that we can understand the kingdoms that were going to rise after 1798. And the symbols that are used in Revelation 17 are woman and beast. So would somebody like to volunteer the definition of a woman of Bible prophecy, or the woman of Revelation 17?
A woman is an entity with an ideology.
Thank you. And a beast? A definition of beast?
A political institution with power.
Thank you. And what's the relationship between the beast and the woman here? How will we finish our definition of the beast?
As adopted the ideology of the woman.
It adopts the ideology Okay. And it is controlled by the woman. So, and I've got to scroll up and down, but if we take the information that we've written here, let's make some columns. So we have a woman. I'll write it here. Entity with ideology. Should have written it under here. And then we'll have a beast. Political institution. So we want to look at the language that is used to describe God's and their kingdom from Daniel 8 and 9. So I'm going to write God here. God's kingdom. What language? Maybe we'll start somewhere different. Maybe we'll start somewhere different. Why don't we go to the desolating power number 1? And who's our desolating power number 1? Okay, that's our little horn, the masculine, pagan Rome. Our desolating power number 2 is the little horn, feminine, papal Rome. Oh, just so papacy. No, we'll write papal Rome, sorry. So where do we see pagan Rome on this line? '70 AD. So pagan Rome is the 4th kingdom of Bible prophecy. If we consider Daniel chapter 2, so Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome. If we think of Revelation 17, it's still the 4th kingdom of Bible prophecy. And what do the first 4 kingdoms of Bible prophecy have in common?
I think the geography they are rising up from.
True, yes. So they're rising up in the same, that Mediterranean area of Europe and Northern Africa. Any other thoughts? Somebody's in the chat. They're all pagan. Good answer. They're all pagan. So when they're all pagan, it's not easy to see, to distinguish the difference between the woman and the beast. It's far easier to see them as a whole. But we can get an idea of the construct of pagan Rome by looking at the language used in Daniel 8 and 9. So our language in Daniel 8 and 9, if we look at 70 AD, we've got the people of the prince. We know that they've got abominable armies. So if we were to come down to our definitions, who would be the entity and what would be the ideology when we think of pagan Rome? How do we understand a woman from Revelation 17? It might be easier to think of how you understand the current political situation and then overlay that over this past history. If you understand who the woman is today, what the ideology is today, and what the beast is today, can we go backwards and to determine that for pagan Rome? How do we understand the woman?
I will say the woman is is Rome and the ideology that Rome is having paganism.
Okay, so I'll write paganism for the ideology. If I was to write Rome here, who's the woman today?
He's an individual, Trump.
It's Trump. So who would be the woman back then?
The
For
emperors?
pagan Rome? Yeah, we could say Caesar.
The emperors.
So whoever Caesar or the emperor is at any given point in time. In 70 AD, who's the woman?
The Vespasian.
Yes, so Vespasian is the woman in 70 AD, but given at any particular time, because he happens to be Caesar or emperor, I'll write Caesar because they're sitting on Caesar's throne. The ideology that they're pushing is paganism, the daily. What's the beast? What's the beast today? Can we make an application for back then?
The beast is Rome.
Yes, so I think here would be a good place to write Rome, or we could write Caesar's throne. The political government that rules Rome. And what is the power that that government has? What's the power it's going to use in 70 AD?
Their armies.
Yes, those abominable armies. Now, usually we don't separate pagan Rome into these different entities. We would in Daniel 8 we could say that whole thing there is is represented by the word daily. But when we compare Daniel 8 and 9, we can cut it up a bit. But it's much easier to see the separation of the woman and the beast with desolating power number 2. So who's the woman with desolating power number 2? So I've written Caesar for number 1, but the word used is prince with a small p. So who's our prince for number 2?
The popes.
Yeah, Pope. Whoever happens to be the Pope at the time. Pope whatever. And what's the ideology? You'll have to go back to Daniel 8, verse 13. There's the daily, and then there's the
Transgression of desolation.
yes. And what's the transgression here that makes desolate? It's basically paganism rebranded. Or Christianity corrupted, whichever way you want to put it. And the beast. What's the political institution that has power? That this woman is going to ride?
Would it be the Vatican?
So go to, if this helps, go to Daniel 11, verse 31. So Daniel 11, verse 31 is going to give us the same history as Daniel 8, verse 11. Sorry, Daniel 8, verse 12. Yeah, Daniel 8, 12 is the same as Daniel 11, 31. What doesn't the Vatican have?
Army.
Armies. And arms shall stand on whose part? On the woman's part. Where did these armies come from?
From Europe.
From Europe. Give me some more information. What about Europe? Yes, they're in Europe, but what are they?
There's France. France is one of them. Clovis.
Yes. And Clovis is a what?
He is a king.
He's a king, yes. So these are European kings. So the beast here are European kings, literally. And the European kings are just sitting on Caesar's throne. So both answers are correct. Which is Caesar's throne. Remember, this is still Rome. And what's the power that these kings have? Daniel 11:31 tells us arms or armies, abominable armies. I'll write 11:31 there, but you can see it back in verse Daniel 9 as well. So any thoughts so far on how we've looked at pagan and papal Rome from Daniel 8 and 9? These two desolating powers. Desolating power number 1 is going to tread down the literal city and sanctuary. Desolating power number 2 is going to do the same work spiritually, even though there's still literal persecutions. So let's go back to God's kingdom and the language that we're given from Daniel, both Daniel 8 and 9. Who would the woman be? Let's go up here.
The host.
So who's the woman today?
Trump.
Messiah the Prince.
Trump, yes. So when you think woman, think a person. So somebody said woman, the woman here would be Messiah the Prince, capital P, as opposed to small p for pagan Rome. What's the ideology of Messiah the Prince? Where would we find the ideology?
Sanctuary.
Oh, say again?
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary. Thank you. So remember we read Daniel 8 verse 24, and everything about that verse really wraps up the ideology of the sanctuary about finishing transgression, making an end of sins, reconciliation, everlasting righteousness, visions and prophecies, and the work of Christ's heavenly ministry, holy place, most holy place. All of that ideology is it encapsulates the plan of salvation. All the ideology of paganism encapsulates the plan of damnation. We talk about the plan of, we can talk about redemption and restoration as opposed to desolation and destruction. So now let's think about the beast. We've worked out the woman of God's kingdom. What's the institution?
Host.
Okay, so a host is an army. And I would suggest that the host or army, or what's called city, is the power that this institution can use. But what would be the political institution? We've got a clue over here with pagan Rome. Because if you've got a prince, where does a prince sit? On a throne. So the political institution would be God's throne, that we can deduct from the fact that it's just not Messiah, it's Messiah the Prince. So that's royalty. That means there's a throne. That throne, that political institution, it's a government run with laws and principles, is powerless without an army. The power of the throne of God lies in its army. And who represents that army? Or what does that, who is the army of God?
God's people.
God's people. If we go back up here, who does Rome destroy, desolate? the mighty and holy people. So this is the mighty and holy people. We could say God's church. We say the movement. So any thoughts or questions? What we've done is we've taken the definitions of Revelation 17 and we've looked at the language of Daniel 8 and 9 and given, made application of those definitions from Daniel 8 and 9. I would suggest that when we look at desolating power number 1 and 2, that takes us down to 1798. 1798, God is going to raise an army. In 1844, that army that is going to take on the ideology of the woman, the sanctuary, the plan of salvation, the visions and the prophecies, fully accept them. From then on, we may have to rethink how we're going to describe God's kingdom at the end of the world. So I think this is the beginning of a story, not necessarily the end, because we're taken to 1844 here. So 1798 to 1844, and then we need to make, probably rethink how we will look at God's kingdom at the end of the world. Yes, I see a hand up.
Okay, happy Sabbath, everyone.
Happy
So
Sabbath.
it's Dennis speaking. So my question is, I see the comparison that you have made between the kingdom of God and the kingdoms of the earth. So you see the woman is the Messiah, the ideology is the sanctuary, and then the beast, which is the political institution, you said it's the throne of God. So I was just, and the power is the army or God's people. So I was trying to think about the beast. This throne of God, is it in earth or is it in heaven?
Good question. Good question. That's I think what we need to discuss. However, it's been an hour and a quarter, and so why don't we end this session and then come back with Q&A and discussion. We'll start there. How does that sound?
Okay, it's fine.
Okay. All right, I'll close in prayer and then we'll have whatever break you want. Emma said we'd have a Q&A after the study, so I'll close in prayer. Dear God in heaven, we thank you for the visions and the prophecies of old. We thank you for the light that is continuing to shine on our path. Help us to make right application of the information you've given us. And we just pray that you would bless us now as we take a little rest and return. Lord, may you clear our any thoughts we have. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So how long a break do you have?